leaders drive a greater vision. They paint a picture that moves the organization forward. They talk about not what is, but what can be, and where it is that you want to drive an organization to. The key is for the vision to be clear, the vision to be compelling, oftentimes in the business world, for the vision to be differentiated from what others are doing. And I like to believe that this compelling vision needs to be positive. It needs to have a positive impact out there in the marketplace. In the video game space, there's a category of game called first-person shooter. When Nintendo was looking to introduce a game in this category, they thought deeply about how to create a concept that would participate in this first-person shooter experience, but would do it in a way that's consistent with their brand and consistent with their vision of putting smiles on people's faces. That execution was Splatoon. And Splatoon, when it launched, surprised many, many people because it is a shooting style game, but it's done in a way that's completely Nintendo. You know, Splatoon and its sequel, Splatoon 2, it has all of the team-based strategy, all of the things that people are excited about in this style of game, but it's completely Nintendo, completely unique. It's a masterful example of having a clear and compelling vision and then executing against that vision. Developing individuals and teams to drive performance. And I highlight individuals separately from teams because as you manage these two different groups, the way you go about it is different, and the way that you help individuals versus teams, there are different skills involved in the process. My first experience in developing individuals and teams was at Procter & Gamble. I used a combination of functional knowledge and a focus on driving teamwork and driving collaboration in order to gel the team and to get aligned on what it was that we were trying to do. I used the same approach when I became a people manager and now had direct responsibility for growing the next group of managers within Procter & Gamble. And I made it a point to spend considerable time with each individual, making sure that I understood their needs and what it is that they needed to work on. I fundamentally believe that empowering everyone in an organization to achieve a goal will drive better results. That said another way, that empowering 5 or 10 or 20 people a day will always accomplish superior results versus what one individual boss can do. It's pure mathematics. The more you help others be successful, the more the business can do. And if you fundamentally believe that, that is the first step in being a great people manager and being a great leader. To me, intellectual curiosity is having a mentality of constantly learning, of constantly expanding your intellectual horizons. And whether you're doing that by reading, listening to podcasts, however you digest your information, doing it in a way to expand your perspective versus doing it as a way to just reinforce your own thinking and living in an echo chamber. It's a great way to get past barriers that were previously thought to be unsolvable. But by asking tough questions, by penetrating to really understand what the issue is and how to solve for it, you're typically able to drive great results. Let me share an example on this. And here I'm going to use my experience working at Panda Management Company, and specifically working on the Panda Express concept. I was charged with creating a Panda Express concept that could be on any street corner in the United States. My approach was to ask lots of questions. Lots of questions of the kitchen staff and what needed to change in the back of house in order for this type of restaurant concept to not only be executable, but to be scalable by being able to add hundreds of these every year. In the end, the results of the concept far exceeded our projections, and they've been rolling out ever since. I believe that the driver for the success of this concept is this concept of intellectual curiosity. Constantly asking questions, figuring out what is the problem, and how do you solve for it moving forward. Valuing differences. Some leaders give this principle lip service. They say that they believe in a diverse organization or a diverse workforce, and that everyone looks like them, acts like them, comes from the same school. That's not valuing differences. Valuing differences is making sure that you're pushing for diverse and inclusive organizations and challenging each other to value these differences. Because I have to tell you, everything matters. Differences in background and life experiences lead to different perspectives. Different perspectives and different approaches lead to a fuller discussion of all of the options and all of the opportunities. In the end, diversity, inclusion, valuing differences leads to better ideas and to better results. It is a fact. And I fundamentally believe that the best leaders fundamentally value differences. They create diverse organizations. They listen to all of the opinions in driving ideas forward. Courage in decision making. Now, it's no surprise that leaders have to make tough decisions. Decisions that can affect thousands of employees, decisions that can have a financial impact of billions of dollars. The Wii, right? It was truly a groundbreaking device driven by a sound understanding of the marketplace, driven by intellectual curiosity. And let me frame this for you, right? Back in the early 2000s, only 1 out of every 3 people played video games. 1 out of every 3. And the global video game market was stagnant. It wasn't growing. Nintendo diagnosed the problem was that there wasn't innovation in the games. It was more and more sequels, right? You know, fill in the blank version 2, 3, 4. It was all the same. There was a lack of innovation in the play styles. The controllers had gotten overly complicated. Nintendo's solution was the Wii Remote, the integral part of the Wii proposition, showing how the nature of the interface between the player and what happened on screen could be fundamentally changed. On a global basis, Nintendo sold over 100 million Wii consoles. 100 million. Led by results in the Americas and in Europe. There was one key decision that drove those results. And it was the decision to include Wii Sports as part of the proposition in the US, the Americas, and in Europe. Irrefutable integrity. Simply put, in order to effectively lead an organization, the people need to believe you. They need to believe in you. They need to know that your focus is doing the right thing, not the easy thing. The ability for an organization to believe its leadership, to understand that what the leadership is trying to do, in the end, is the best thing for the company, for the individual, for all of the constituents, is a key part of leadership. And when that integrity is broken, organizations fail. And this is something that I really want you to think about. You want to be known as the individual who does things that is right versus doing things that's easy. And as long as you focus on doing the right thing for all of the right reasons, you're going to get people who will follow you in driving your ideas forward. Leaders need to be able to communicate their ideas, their direction, and provide feedback in order to drive the organization forward. And in my view, there are three key elements in stellar communication: written communication, verbal communication, and non-verbal communication. So let's start with the power of written communication. One of the things that I learned at Procter & Gamble was crafting the perfect one-page memo. It teaches you how to think clearly, how to think concisely, how to think persuasively. Later in my career, I was fortunate to be in situations where I had to verbally communicate my ideas. Instead of P&G's method of moving the business forward with a one-page memo, Pizza Hut moved the business forward with presentations. But the power of presenting and the power of being effective in presenting your ideas is a key leadership component. My time at Nintendo, I became a master in nonverbal communication. And that's because business was done both in Japanese and in English. Mr. Iwata might say something to me in Japanese. It would be translated into English. I would respond in English, but it would be translated back in Japanese. But the translation doesn't have emotion. It doesn't capture a smile or a twinkle of the eye or a frown. All of these nonverbal messages that are being delivered with the commentary. So it taught me to focus on, the individual and what they're saying. Are they smiling? Are they frowning? What is the nonverbal cues in the message that's being delivered?
What should leaders do to ensure that women have the same opportunities to rise up in a company when the industry as a whole is so male-dominated?
Valuing differences is a leadership function. And so, a couple stories, right? An African American leading a Japanese company. As I created my leadership team, I value differences. And you should take your business and your careers to those companies that truly value differences. That's my opinion.
How do you make sure your team isn't destroyed by that toxicity?
I'm getting performance feedback. And the feedback literally was, Reggie, you're too optimistic. You're constantly looking for the solution. You're looking for the upside. You're always looking for the positive, and you're not spending enough time on the negative. I left that company. Feedback is a gift. Any type of feedback is a gift. But at times you really have to think about, is this feedback consistent with what I believe in myself? Is this consistent with what I believe I can do?
My question for you is, what is your favorite game that came out during your time at Nintendo?
That came out during my time at Nintendo? I would say Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. I'm a huge Zelda fan, always have been, but I loved Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. And I believe what the developers did with Breath of the Wild and changing the convention of the Zelda franchise was phenomenal.
You know you're a meme to some extent. And I was wondering, do you have any measurable way of like knowing how that affected sales?
It's really difficult to try and measure the impact of one particular meme. But I will say this, I do believe that the memes I was part of, I believe it creates a relationship with our consumer. And in the end, having a healthy relationship with our customer drives sales.
Hi, what's your main in Smash?
Those of you who truly are Nintendo fans know that I'm not very good at Smash. But when I do play, I've mained two characters. I play Princess Zelda. Her ability to float keeps me on the stages. And then I've also mained Ridley.